Hello, and welcome to this episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. The First Nations peoples of North America have a rich tradition of the supernatural. From the ravenous wendigo that haunts the northern forests to the terrifying skinwalkers of the Southwest, the wilderness of the New World has harbored spirits and monsters from time immemorial. Let's explore a few of these stories when we go Lights Out. And when the last red man shall have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth among the white men, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children think themselves alone in the field, the store, the shop, upon the highway, or in the silence of the pathless woods, they will not be alone. In all the earth there is no place dedicated to solitude. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages are silent and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning ghosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. Chief Seattle, after signing the treaty, 1854. One of these spirits is Kichisomlo, who also happens to be Chief Seattle's own daughter. She was born in 1820 and lived through the downfall of the Northwest Indian tribes, including her own tribe, the Suquamish. She spent her final days eking out a living as a laundress in Seattle. The white settlers in the city called her Princess Angeline because she carried herself with such dignity. Kichisomlo died in 1890. Shortly after Pike Place Market opened in 1907, witnesses began telling stories of an elderly Indian woman who would take a purposeful path through the market, just as any senior citizen might who was running errands. The difference with this lady was that at the end of her route, she would suddenly disappear. The Phantom Senior was always described the same way. She appeared as an elderly Indian woman, with a shawl tied over her head, who walked with a cane. She would hobble through the market, always taking the same route as she went. When she reached the craft emporium, she would vanish. The spirit of Kichisomlo is most active for 1 week every 3 months, so her appearance might mark the changing of the seasons. Her ghost is still seen today, adding to the color and bustle of Pike Place Market. The ghost of Chief Seattle's daughter is a harmless, even pleasant phantom to encounter. There are other Native American spirits that are far more terrifying. The northern forests are home to the Wendigo, a monster created by that most egregious of sins, cannibalism. The legend says that any person who eats human flesh will turn into the Wendigo, a creature who, naturally, eats people. The curse of the Wendigo is that the more it eats, the bigger it gets, and the more nourishment it requires. So it is doomed to get hungrier and hungrier the more it eats. It's always starving, never satisfied. An equally hair-raising entity makes the Navajo Nation's territories its stomping grounds. The Navajo Nation is defined by Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, and their culture is rich with folk tales. In Navajo folklore, a skinwalker is a medicine man or woman who has turned from healing to evil. A skinwalker is, at the bottom of it all, a shapeshifter who takes animal form. The term Yi Naldushi literally translates to "with it he goes on all fours." This skinwalker is always on the hunt for souls, human souls. The Southwest is also home to the kachinas, the immortal beings in the Hopi culture that control the natural world and act as messengers between humans and the spirit world. Kachinas can be deceased ancestors of the tribe, but most often they are the spirits of animals or of natural elements. The kachinas come down to the Hopi villages every year to join in the kachina ceremony, a celebration of the harvest and community. Before each ceremony, the men of the village would spend days making small figurines, the kachina dolls, to represent the spirits that would be honored in that particular ceremony. These dolls would be passed on to the daughters of the village by the giver kachina during the ceremony. Afterwards, the dolls would be hung on the walls and used to teach young women, especially new brides, about the characteristics and gifts of the kachina. Being nature spirits, the kachina can be very powerful. They are the bringers of rain for a bountiful harvest, no small task in the arid Southwest. As a result, even kachina dolls can be the repositories of immense power. I spoke with Ophelia Julian about a friend of hers, a shop owner, who discovered just how powerful kachinas can be. Ophelia's husband, Jim, started things off by describing an experience he'd had in a Lakota sweat lodge. Lakota healing ceremony.
Yes, okay. We're at a Lakota healing ceremony. Unusual insofar as that was in southern Indiana. Okay, and I can't remember the leader's name.
Steve McCullough.
Steve McCullough, that's right. So he was a medicine man, and so one of the things that we did was a sweat. Okay, beforehand. I don't know if you participated in the sweat.
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay, and then there was the healing ceremony, which was at night, and there was a lot of people. I'd say maybe there was 50 to 75 people there. At least. And we were all sitting in this big, not open, it was a covered building, okay, but it was round. All right. And they just said, as part of this healing ceremony, lights are going to go out and things are going to happen, okay?
Yeah.
We can't tell you what, so you'll see things and you'll feel things and you'll hear things, okay? So, and it was like, if you looked up at the ceiling and you could see the sky, and you would feel feathers brushing your face, and you could hear the flapping of wings, and it was really just a whole weird.
And you experienced these are the things that you experienced?
Both of us experienced it.
Wow.
Yeah. And we don't know how they made it happen. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not very good at illusory things,
Yeah.
So I just took it at face value, and so it was very, very interesting stuff.
Oh wow. And Ophelia, you were mentioning a store with kachina dolls in a case.
Yes, I was. We had gone shopping and we were in a Southwest store, and they had kachina dolls on display. And we were talking to the proprietor about it, and she said we learned not to lock the cabinets when we put them back in their glass cases, because if you shut the door and lock it, the energy contained explodes out. So when they would close the store, they would put all the kachina dolls back in the cabinets, but they would leave the doors open.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And sometimes the spirits of the dead just want to communicate with us. My friend Jody Bailey shared with me a truly delightful experience she had at a powwow. Jody, share with me the story of the...
Johnny?
Yes.
Okay, I went to powwow. I was sitting by myself on a picnic table, watching the dancers do several dances. Oh, what was the dance? Oh, it's been so long ago now. I can't remember what dance they were doing. Oh, yeah. It was the memorial 1-year death of his son, and this father was by himself dancing in the circle. And all of a sudden I looked, and there was his son dancing with him. Dancing with him, and they went around and around, and more people joined the circle, and he stayed. And after the dance was over, this boy came to me and wanted me to go tell his father that he danced with him. And it took me forever to get up the nerve to go tell this man that his son was there with him, and I literally stalked him. Stalked him around the pub. He's stopping at the various little booths, and I'm like, doo-doo-doo, trying to get. And here's this kid. Tell him. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I can't remember if the bracelet came before her.
I think you were looking at the bracelet.
I was looking at the bracelets.
Yeah.
That's right. I stopped to look at the bracelets as
You were procrastinating a little
as
more.
I was stalking his father. And I stopped to look at the. Anyway, yeah, I was looking at the bracelets. I went back around, sat on the picnic table, and the father came to me and handed me the bracelet that I was looking at, and he didn't know why. And it was at that point that I told him that his son was with him, and that I'd been trying to tell him that his son was with him, but he didn't know why that he stopped and bought that particular bracelet for me.
And you said you were standing there and felt a shove behind.
Yes. He literally shoved me. I'm standing there, and he's like this, because his dad was like from here to here, and I'm like do, and he went. See, you remember it better than I do. That's the end. Little Johnny, and he stayed with me for a long time after that. He would visit off and on. I haven't seen him for years.
Thank you. These stories are just a tiny fraction of the rich tradition of folklore that Native Americans have to share. If you like folk tales, or even better, ghost stories, there's plenty to discover in Native American lore. Please join me next time when we'll be sitting down for a chat with Aaron G. Thompson and Nick Simons of Ghost Crier. Until then, keep your s'mores handy, for the next time we go, lights out.
Aun jolo hi ye bantal.